Welcome to another session of the Leo Kingdom Podcast with myself, Amir, Yovan.
Hello.
And Amanda.
Hello.
We got an interesting clip today.
Don't we have one every time?
Oh, yeah. But I kind of like this one because this is Novak Djokovic.
Djokovic.
I'm
just joking. It's Djokovic.
Djokovic?
Yes.
Okay.
Novak Djokovic.
Novak Djokovic. And he's Serbian. I like this guy. He's got like, to me, he seems like the antithesis of, what was that tennis player, the American?
Agassi?
No, not, this was the guy who was always flying off the handle.
McEnroe?
Yeah, John McEnroe.
Johnny boy.
Mm-hmm.
The way he used to always lose his cool. He's always hot-headed.
Mm-hmm.
Novak seems like the complete opposite of this guy.
Well, Novak loses his cool. He's broken countless rackets.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, I never seen him do it.
But, I mean, it's not like, he does it to himself. He doesn't, do it. He actually, it's organic. It's not, he's not trying to make a show out of it.
Yeah.
He's actually really.
It's in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a big
much.
difference, though.
Yep.
Let's play the clip. Let's
do it.
We're doing a series on athlete mental health, and I'm curious what's the most important thing they can do to take care of themselves this Olympic Games?
It's a great question. I think probably the number one thing is to learn how to consciously breathe. I think it sounds weird because we all know how to breathe. Obviously, it's automatic, but I think consciously breathing, really learning how to master that skill, because that helps with better sleep, better recovery, more presence in the moment, because we always travel from past to future, so I think breathing always centers you, so I think that's probably, one of the most important advices, and then, really trying to understand emotionally who you are, what's your background, the whole story of your upbringing. It's quite complex, you know what I mean, and so it takes as much effort as the physical effort that you put in as an athlete, so training the mental muscles is equally important.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. Thank you. Have a good time.
Yeah, I really want to get into that, man, because, and what was that, like 60 seconds?
Yeah, that was 60 seconds.
He said a lot of shit in 60 seconds, just
Yes.
like really opened up a rabbit hole of a lot of things.
Well,
And
I'd like to start off by going over what he could have answered differently, what an average athlete would say. So,
nothing like that.
Well, an average athlete would say, get some sleep, eat right, get your 3 meals a day, something like that, and he just goes and totally 180. That's a 180. You don't hear anybody say you got to breathe right. Consciously breathe right. Imagine, just stop, separate that. Consciously breathe right.
That's the key to everything.
It is.
The way he said that, because
we don't know that.
Because that opens up a lot of different, that's like the basis, the foundation of a lot of different meditation practices. And self-remembering, because we talk a lot on Leo Canaan about self-remembering, self-awareness, and fragmentation and things like that. And that's what he's actually talking about when he says we're traveling a lot from the past to the present. Like, he's talking about a self-remembering process, a self-fragmentation process. When you sent me that clip, that kind of blew my mind that he was able to pack that like that in that 60-second comment.
On the fly.
Yeah,
he took maybe a second to think about it before he started saying it.
Yeah, he knew he was thinking a lot deeper than what they expect. Because I read through some of the comments, and if you read through the comments, like, everybody's just mind blowing. Like, right. what made him make a comment like that?
Were the comments positive or negative?
They were all positive. I heard, all the comments I heard were positive.
Okay.
I mean, all the comments I read, it was like dozens of them, all positive comments. They were like, wow.
Well, and I think you can really see the whole of what he said in action if you look at Simone Biles' story. Because in 2020, she backed out of the Olympics because she had like a mental block. It was really, and I just watched her series on Netflix, and what her mental block was all of the crap that just was coming back up from the issues with Larry Nasser and not being protected as part of the USA Olympic team and the abuses and stuff. And then, you know, as an athlete, she compartmentalized it, but you can only do that for so long. And then she gets to Tokyo and it's, you know, COVID Olympics and everyone's isolated. Her family, who's always there, is not there. And the, you know, the arena is empty. And it just like, it flipped the switch where all of a sudden now she's got to deal with her past. And she goes through it where, you know, it took her quite a while, like over a year and a half probably, of therapy and dealing with all of it and learning, you know.
Yeah, it probably hit her all at once.
Yeah.
So in Novak's comment, and I like this question is for both of you guys. In Novak's comment, do you think he was speaking directly to the physical experience of being an Olympian, or was he talking? Do you think he was speaking about a spiritual process? Because the way I processed his comment, because I would like to go through his comment line by line, because if you break it, remember the Nerd Writer, this podcast I used to listen to years ago, and the way he would just break things down line by line. If you break down everything Novak was just saying line by line, he's talking about a spiritual process. And he's trying to give you, because a lot of times if you try to tell people about spiritual processes, whether it's meditation or things like that, they get turned off if they're not ready for it. They're like, oh, this is so phooey. Nobody wants to talk about that. But he kind of like slipped it in there in a way, and you don't, if you're not into a spiritual process, you don't know that's exactly what he was talking about.
Yeah, I think, I mean, he's an elite athlete. I think it is a spiritual process, but the way it's filtered into him is that it's come through his experience through athletics and the trials and tribulations in his life and in athletics that he's gone through. They've been spiritual experiences, but he equates them to athletics and how it all relates, and it's the same thing. But maybe he doesn't. I don't know.
What are some of the things he's been through?
Well, I mean, his career is like a, you know, it could be made it as a movie. I mean, he started off with, you know, two parents that were poor, that, you know, gave their last dollar to get him where he is today, you know, to buy him rackets. Because, you know, playing tennis is an expensive sport.
Yeah.
Especially in a country like Serbia where you don't have tennis courts. You want to play tennis, an hour of tennis currently today in Serbia is anywhere from like 30 to 40 to 50 euros, which is, you know, let's say about $50 an hour.
Right.
Just to play right now. And that's thanks to him. They have these courts where you can rent these out. You know, you don't have a public park like they do today here in the United States where, let's face the facts, people don't even play here a lot of tennis, right?
No.
Like it's not even popular in the United States, but just about every park has at least a couple tennis courts, right? If not more.
At least every community center has at least one or two.
That's correct.
Well, America's getting so lazy. We're switching over to pickleball.
Oh, let's not go negative now. You know, let's stick to the positive parts where, you know.
Oh, good point. But what year was Novak born?
I'm not sure. I believe it was like maybe 1985, 86. But he's, you know, going towards his end of his career right now. He's on a downfall physically, spiritually. You know, he's just getting up there more and more. I think he couldn't be the number one player that he is today if he wasn't as spiritual as he is.
He has to have an extreme.
And
spiritual
he's been number one for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in tennis.
Yeah.
He's May 22nd, 87.
There you go, 87.
1987.
Yep. So he's 37 right now.
Yeah.
37.
Yep. So he's got about a year, 2 years at tops, you know, for being physically, you know, being able to play more tennis.
Yeah, he's been part of the big three, which like Roger Federer, Rafael, Nadal, and
That's correct. And he just beat
Djokovic.
Nadal in the Olympics.
Yeah.
It was easily he beat him.
Yeah, I remember he made there was some controversy with Novak not too long ago. You sent me a clip where he made a comment and it seemed like he was being booed or something.
Yes, he was being booed because he was at a place where vaccination was needed, and when the COVID was happening, he opted not to get vaccinated.
I think
So-
was it the Australian Open?
Yeah, Australian Open.
Yeah.
Where Australia was really big onto getting vaccinated. So it was an isolated incident. It wasn't, majority of the people that were there, were positive. A few bad eggs booed him. They were kind of indirectly booing him by cheering majorly for the other guy. So he kind of called him out, smart way. He just kind of said good night to the ones that were booing him, which was also genius way to, address the crowd. If you go out there and be like, the hell with you guys, people are going to look at you negatively. He just kind of made it funny in a way where kind of like when Donald Trump, says something negative, he says it as funny. So, there's no repercussion to it.
I think Novak, he just strikes me as a guy that has a lot of style and class.
Yeah, I from what I've seen, I think he does. I think he's got a sense of humor as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you don't get to where he's at without, trials and tribulations.
Without an extreme spiritual practice, I think.
Yeah.
Which is what he was alluding to. He was trying to plug it's time to have some spiritual practice, because that's the foundation of all spirituality is conscious breathing. In fact, if you are not consciously breathing, you're not actually alive.
I think a lot of these sports psychologists or consultants or performance coaches really take the things that they have you practice, like meditation and breathing and things to calm you to be ready for performance. Their spiritual practices, I think they package them differently, because maybe, as an athlete, you're only on your sport. It's like tunnel vision. You don't realize you need this stuff. So they, it's okay. These are exercises which an athlete understands. Like, you have to do your exercise, you have to get your reps in, and it's these things that are really spiritual that they're doing, and they don't recognize it by the same name.
I think it's hard for these athletes to do a spiritual exercises, because as a you're 20 something years old, if not even in your teens, when you're a multi-millionaire, you got a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, any 5 other cars in your garage, and somebody's telling you, hey, sit there for 15 to 30 minutes and meditate. You're like, some stuff is going through your mind where your phone is blowing up.
Too much adrenaline.
Too much, absolutely. And you already made your life saving money that you can't spend. You could spend it, but let's face the facts. You just made in your first year more money than 99% of the people in the world will make in their lifetime. And you're gonna sit there, waste half an hour and meditate. It's not happening.
Yeah, you're right. It's real hard it's because life is an adrenaline rush. At some point, when you experience certain things, the adrenaline rush is like it's almost like an IV. So especially with with athletics or money or anything like that, it's hard to come down off of that adrenaline high.
That's why I think it's it needs to be pointed out where being number one at any sport is probably easier than being number one for a long period of time. Number one, because you become number one, and then you're like, okay, I achieved it. Somebody else hungrier is going to come and get it. But if you're number one for years, 1, 2, 3 years, that's a major accomplishment where, you're going down in history for a reason, because you're mentally strong.
And I think you'll find that the athletes that are number one for long periods of time or have these huge achievements have those spiritual practices that, they don't call them spiritual, but that's what they are.
They don't disclose them. Pull up Novak's Wikipedia page.
I want to point out a couple things that he said. He said breathing centers you, and also breathing helps you know who you are. Those things are super powerful.
The unfortunate part about it is it's going over a lot of people's heads.
Mm-hmm.
But we are here, to talk about that. And it's going to, him saying it and being, right now we got, video of him saying that. If he said it, just 50 years ago, there's no chance anybody would notice it. Yeah. Now there's a chance.
Yeah.
I think, like for yoga, that's like one of the things they talk about. Like breathing's really important, especially as you're moving through each position, but it's about centering and grounding and, just being conscious of your whole.
But, him saying breathing helps you know who you are. Mm-hmm. That is
it's
some
deep
reincarnation type stuff.
Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If you let's go by line what he's saying. He's trying to give you an allusion to a lot deeper spiritual awareness, and he does it in a way that doesn't come off as corny, which is almost impossible to do when you're talking about spiritual things. It's virtually impossible to not come off as corny.
Right.
Because people are so grounded in the physical reality. They're so grounded in, non-essential things, and they're so grounded in, just bullshit that any kind of spiritual talk, we all have this department in our head. We have a compartment that we're going to immediately foul it in, and it's corny. Nobody wants to hear about it.
Well, it sounds like fantasy. That's what it is.
Fantasy, yeah.
Well, when I first started hearing about spirituality, you hear these stories. I'm just like, man, it just sounds too good to be true. It sounds like a sci-fi movie.
It sounds like a sci-fi movie,
right.
which is actually what we're living in, is a sci-fi movie, And I think his comment kind of alludes to that. If you listen to his comment and just imagine he's making this statement in the sci-fi movie.
Well, I thought about listening to his comment, and if it wasn't him saying it, if it was just an average Joe saying it, how many people would stop and think about it? But it's Djokovic saying it, It's the number one tennis player in the world saying it.
That's got some gravity on it.
Exactly. It's who says it.
Yeah.
I think it's a big deal.
That's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, and the world is listening.
Yeah, because the whole world's listening to him say that.
Correct.
So
I think it'll be interesting to see the younger tennis players that are up and coming, because there's a few that are really good and they're young, they're early 20s. Mm-hmm. How many are paying that close attention to him and start practicing those things, and how fast they catapult? Because there's a couple that are really on the rise.
Well, I think it's easier said than done. Because if you want to follow his footsteps, you got to spend time with him. You just can't be like, hey, Djokovic, tell me in 5 minutes what I should do. That's not how it works. It takes days, weeks, months to become who he is. And you got to spend time with him, You got to literally walk in his shoes to learn exactly what he has learned. So, for example, Djokovic, he chose to spend 3 days. That's known public knowledge. He spent 3 days in Bosnia with a guy that discovered the pyramids in Bosnia. He spent 3 days with this guy. Now, why would a number one tennis player in the world go and spend 3 days with a guy that he never met in his life, right? And just go and just hang out with him? Because there's stuff to learn.
Well, I think a lot of it is there's a huge spiritual awakening happening right now. And everything that points in the opposite direction of that is part of the distraction. There's two things happening right now on the planet. A huge spiritual awakening that's probably affecting, I would say, less than about 3% of the planet that's only aware of what's happening. And the other 97 to 95% of the planet is absorbed in the distraction or participating in the distraction.
Are you talking about the human population?
Yeah, the human population, yeah. And then you have maybe 3 to 5% that's actually aware that there's a huge spiritual awakening taking place right now. Mm-hmm. And so another huge part of that to offset it is this intentional vaccine that's called the woke culture. Because the woke culture is actually a vaccine to the spiritual awakening.
But it's a spiritual vaccine.
It's a spiritual vaccine.
Okay.
But what it is if you get involved or if you get infected with the woke culture, you won't ever get a full understanding of the spiritual awakening or the spiritual process that's happening on the planet right now because you got sucked into that woke culture.
Well, it sounds like woke culture to me like a new religion in a way.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. That's
So
the best way
you're
to
being
do it.
distracted with this new religion instead of maybe, waking up to the spirituality that's going on.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. Is a new religion.
Well, how can someone who's like starting to experience things and like realize things, like recognize woke versus legit like spiritualism?
Research. There's no substitute for research, and there's a difference between a trusted source and researching things for yourself. So.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, like, where do you go for those trusted sources? Because like the internet is just a font of like
And
all
not
the
to mention-
information's there. So all the bad information's there, but all the good information's there. So how do you?
When I say trusted source, I mean someone that's in your sphere of influence, someone that you know on a personal basis. That's the only way you can have a trusted source.
But most people don't have a trusted source. They don't have anybody in there, and especially with technology, we're more antisocial. We have less and less talking with human beings on physical level.
And that's intentional, though.
That's correct.
That's
but then what would an average person that has no one that is into spirituality, the right way to show them a start? Where can they start?
They have to research. So when you have, there's maybe a spirituality, true spirituality is a path. It's a path and it's a journey. And, once you step on that path, you realize several different things. That it's a never-ending path. You will never know all that there is to know. There will remain things that you will never know. That's the first thing you'll understand when you step on that path. When you're legitimately on that path, once you step on it, you will realize when other people are actually on the path and how far ahead they are on you, which will be a difference between people that are not even on the path. So you'll be able to recognize when you talk to someone that's not even on the path, a real spiritual path. So people that are not on a true spiritual path, is in order to prevent them from finding the true spiritual path, it's that enters woke culture. So now you have these people, what's happening is with woke culture, they're just wandering around. They're not on a path. Because of true spirituality, there's going to be a forward momentum. There's a trajectory. It's goal oriented. There are spiritual goals that you have to set, because there's spiritual goals you want to achieve. There's going to be mundane goals related to the improvement of your health, your finances, your life circumstances, and things like that. True spirituality is here to facilitate that growth pattern. And so what happens is when a person is involved in woke culture, what they don't realize is they're still just wandering in the wilderness.
What is the worst part of woke culture, in your opinion?
The worst part of woke culture, in my opinion, is that they think that they know.
What do they know?
Anything.
And they just repeat buzzwords.
They repeat buzzwords. They repeat. There's no real research in being woke. They're not researching anything. They hear things, whether it's grounded in maybe a conspiracy theory, which conspiracy theories are real.
Right.
It's a real thing.
Right, but if you have a conspiracy theory and 20% of that conspiracy theory is false, I would say it's a bad conspiracy theory.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And I think that's what woke culture is doing, is they're getting majority information right if it's a conspiracy theory, but then you got that little bit in there, 10-20% in there that is not correct, and then the whole entire thing falls apart. Then you look like an asshole. You look dumb.
Well, remember, there's no objective to woke culture. They just, for example, we know that, the Food and Drug Administration is, failing the American people. There's things that we shouldn't be eating processed foods and all these different things. And so a good example of what woke culture looks like is when people begin to complain about what is in the food. This is overprocessed. This is not good for you. The Food and Drug Administration, and you start complaining about the government. That's what woke is, because when you're truly awake, you realize you have the power to change the government. So if you're a part of a country that is a government by the people, for the people, and of the people, you don't complain about it. You just go about making the changes.
And I think when we're in that point right there, I think the best way to start that change is by yourself. You know, let's say, for example, that bad food, I think you just stop buying it, right?
Exactly.
You know, you start on your own, right? And then others will join. And that's the best thing you can do is, you know, change yourself.
Yeah, that's what you're empowered to do. But, you know, people, if in the woke culture, there's no objectivity to it. They don't have, it's not goal oriented. There's no.
You're just saying they're complaining but not doing anything about it.
Yeah, they're
just kind of like posting stuff on the internet, right?
Exactly. They're just posting things on the internet. Nobody's trying to do anything about it. Nobody's trying to make a change. Nobody's trying to change the conversation. Nobody's trying to influence the government. Nobody's doing anything. Mm-hmm. They think they know something that may have affected them in some kind of a way, and so they just wallow in that experience. Mm-hmm. Now that they know something. Like, for example, a part of woke culture is now that they're all attacking religion. And that's a very dangerous process because, you know, especially like, let's say, an African-American community, you know, there's this new woke movement about how, you know, Christianity is not necessarily the best thing for African American people. Mm-hmm. And that may be true, but what makes that a woke ideology is because that's not everybody's experience with it. There are going to be some African Americans and some people that have had a great experience with Christianity. Just because you can see, you know, through its ideology and may not necessarily agree with it. And so now you're on the internet tearing down Christianity with no idea of the repercussions of a belief system that could fall apart, that how it would affect 2.5 billion people if Christianity fell apart.
Well, now that we're in Christianity and religion, going back to Djokovic, now he's a big religious kind of guy. You know, he wears a Serbian cross, you know, all the time. He crosses himself before matches, after matches. You know, he thanks God, right? But you know, he's a Christian Orthodox, and it seems like, you know, a guy that went through spirituality. Let's say, you know, he went through some serious spirituality. You know, he's sticking to his original religion where he's from. Now, I think that's an interesting fact, because why is he doing that? You know, what has he discovered? Anything major? You know, what do you think about that?
Well, there's a couple things. So first of all, we're dealing with a very intelligent man. He has an interest in things that most people that adhere to a belief system, you don't hear them say certain things, like what he just said about conscious breathing. This is not part of the Christian dichotomy or ideology. So, but if you have a person like Djokovic that discovers the true spirituality behind what the religion is, mm-hmm. he's going to keep promoting that religion, even if he has moved on to a higher understanding of what that religion is based on. So let's say Djokovic has now discovered much more complicated spiritual processes, but he was raised as a Orthodox Christian. So, and he's from a country that's grounded in Orthodox Christianity. He's not going to do anything to upset that apple cart. In fact, he's going to do what's necessary so that those people stay grounded in that religion. That's a great example because it brings a contrast between maybe an African American that discovers the flaws in Christianity and its relationship to black people coming to America. And so what they immediately want to do is start tearing that down. You see what I mean?
But in fact, you should do the opposite.
When you shouldn't tear it down.
Right.
And so now a person that tears it down is not even looking in the mirror to realize that he's not grounded in a spirituality himself. Because if you are grounded in real spirituality, you don't have any animosity towards religion. Because true spirituality, like the yin and yang process, lets you know that there's going to be flaws in every system. There's, we're in a physical world, so there's flaws in every system. And if you ever go through the process of having your belief system torn apart from you, if you ever have experienced that, you would not do that to someone else. That's a path of personal discovery. You're not gonna get on the bullhorn and start, downgrading religion. In fact, a large part of what's happening in the world is because the world is losing its religion. They need it back.
What would you say is the difference between religion and spirituality? Because I feel like some people, they don't know the difference or don't recognize where they separate. You know what I mean?
Well, one of the main differences is that spirituality is universal. Now, all religion is grounded in the same spirituality because there's only one spirituality, and all religions come from this spirituality. Now, depending on where you are in the world, who conquered that land and how long ago that land was conquered, is going to determine what your religion is. I was born into a Christian environment. I had no say-so over that. There may be my counterpart somewhere in Egypt or Syria
Or Europe.
and he may be born into Islam. He had no control over that. Religion, you enter into the world, and a religion is given to you, and to a large degree there's a moral code in there, and there's an ethical code in there, and there's flaws in religions because there's flaws in men. But they're all grounded. You can see the same thread of commonality through all religions. You see, and if you adhere to that religious doctrine in the right way, there's usually Easter eggs, and this is where we get the concept of Easter eggs. If you adhere, let's say if you're a Christian and you're actually a really good Christian from your heart, you will be able to identify the Easter eggs in the religion that leads you on a higher path to a universal spirituality. You see what I mean?
I think so.
I got a question. And what do you think, since Djokovic is towards the end of his career, now when he finishes playing tennis, what do you think he should do afterwards? And the second question is, what do you think he will do?
Well, I can't really say what I think he should do, but I could kind of place a bet on what I think he will do.
Okay, go ahead.
And I think he's going to work with kids.
You think he's going to do tennis?
I think he's going to work with kids.
He does have 2 kids.
And I think he's going to work, with kids at large, not just his own. And I think he's gonna work through coaching them through tennis and everything, and getting them grounded. Tennis helped him find his way to an unbelievable lifestyle and spirituality. So if I had to bet on it, I would say he's going to start tennis camps and work with children to give them when you're a boy and before you hit that first surge of hormones at 12 or 13 years old, it's good to have something that you're focused in before that happens. So if a young man, he's 8, 9 years old, he's 8, 9, 10 years old, and you've already piqued his interest in tennis, once that first puberty hits and that surge of hormones hit, it's only going to pour his focus into that sport. You see what I mean? As opposed to pouring his focus into girls or pouring his focus into rebelliousness or rambunctiousness. It'll pour it into that sport because you've already got the program laid for him. And now his testosterone and spikes are going to force him to want to get better at that sport.
Let's say Djokovic is listening right now. What advice, as a spiritual man you are, what would you give him as an advice?
I don't know that I could in a position to give him his spiritual advice because I don't know exactly where he's at. And just based off the comment that he made, it is scratching the surface for somebody to lead with the comment that says to address mental health with conscious breathing. That's an iceberg comment. And, in order for him to make that kind of an iceberg comment where you see 10% of what he's saying and that there's 90% that he's not saying, and he's aware of that. So he has at least an understanding of the things that I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I think I would like to have a conversation with him